Good to see everyone. We have a full afternoon, so I'm going to get us going. I've caught Denise breathless. Peter, bring those recorders right here. Okay, we're going to call us to order. Thanks everyone for coming in the afternoon, and we're going to move, that was the chair's report. We're moving right to public open time. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Okay, Steve, anything you want to tell us? Okay, very good. We're going to close public open time and move now to our first agenda item. Diane, please.
Madam Chairman, I asked if you'd like me to swear in the new member prior to the
absolutely.
items.
Yes, please, let's do.
I have Jack. Just a little, for any of you that haven't been here, we are going to be broadcast on our website tomorrow.
By next couple of days.
Next couple of days. We usually have our board meetings in the Granicus system, and we have a substitute here today, so the meeting will be available on our website. Out the door to the left, down the hall to the right, are the restrooms for any of you that haven't been here. And I'd like to take this moment to swear in our alternate from Fairfax, Renee Goddard. Good afternoon. And so I'm going to do that. I, Diane Steinhauser, Executive Director of the Transportation Authority of Marin, do hereby certify that Renee Goddard is hereby appointed as a member of the TAM Board of Commissioners, alternate to Fairfax, at a special meeting of the Transportation Authority of Marin held Monday, July 11, 2016. Please repeat after me. I, Renee Goddard.
I, Renee Goddard.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties upon which I'm about to enter.
The duties upon which I am about to enter.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Welcome.
Diane, if I might, before you move on, we are going to have one discussion item in open session before we move into our main item for today, the Executive Director Annual Performance Review. But I think wisely, Diane has wanted to bring us, for just initial look and discussion purposes, a funding strategy for some key connector to 580, which was in the IJ editorial this morning, so it's a good thing we're talking about it. So we will have a 15-minute max presentation on the high points of this, and then we'll break and go to closed session. I know Judy needs to leave to go to another meeting at that time, and you too, Gary. Okay, all right. So there we are.
But not together.
Not together.
Okay, thank you. Madam Executive Director, please.
All right, thank you very much. You have at your seats a PowerPoint copy. I'm going to be going through this initial portion of this very quickly. This is a PowerPoint, the beginning at least, of this, that you saw in January, and maybe even since then in bits and pieces. What I want to do is introduce you, refamiliarize you again with the work that we've been doing, coordinating with City of Larkspur, County of Marin, as well as City of San Rafael, very closely over the last, probably a year and a half now, to look at potential improvements on East Sir Francis Strait leading to the Richmond Bridge corridor, and also at the northbound 101 off-ramp to Bellum, which is the connector to the Richmond Bridge corridor in the San Rafael area. So, the Richmond Bridge project elements, the eastbound third lane will be a continuation of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard onto the lower deck of the Richmond Bridge. The project is now going to be advertised July 26th, so it's right around the corner. It's been managed by the Area Toll Authority, by BATA, with close coordination with TAM and our sister agency, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. The upper deck will have a 10-foot barrier separated bike and pedestrian path. So both bikes and vehicular trips will be accommodated. There are two main connector routes You're all, I'm sure, very familiar with this. One is on East Sir Francis Drake, exiting Highway 101 northbound, and the other is at Bellem Boulevard, exiting Highway 101 northbound. There is also a direct connector from southbound 101 to 580. That was constructed, by the way, as a two-lane connector as part of the gap closure project, opened back in 2009. The improvement options that were considered, there was a number of parameters that the team adopted from the local agencies and TAM staff that we did not want to delay the third lane project in any way. That we were hoping to find a way to reach approval, funding, and get these underway at the time the third lane opens. We believe the third lane, if advertised and proceeding as planned, will take about a year and a few months to construct. So somewhere around August or September of 2017, that third lane eastbound will be open to traffic. We also wanted to try and find funding quickly. This is just a short list. You can read this in your attachments of what the improvements along Drake are and what the improvements at Bellem Boulevard. One other concept I do need to keep mentioning is that we wanted to make sure the improvements didn't just address regional trips, but that they had added benefit to local circulation and in no way damaged local circulation in and out of the business areas or out of the residential areas adjacent to these connectors. We wrote a letter, if you remember, you authorized this to MTC, very politely asking them for $7 million to potentially fund the approach work. We got a very polite reply from BATA, MTC, saying, sorry, we don't have funds available to be able to fund this approach work. We then, after reporting this to you in April, you directed us to talk with Caltrans. We met and talked with Caltrans about funding the approach work, and they declined as well. And so, recognizing that this, both a short and long-term solution are very important to this very congested area of Highway 101 and 580, staff are bringing a solution forward for your consideration. The temporary solution is really the first 6 slides, which is, let's make these improvements to East Drake and the improvements at the off-ramp to Bellem to allow additional trips to get to the Richmond Bridge corridor without damaging and, in effect, improving access to the local business and residential community as well. A permanent solution, obviously, as being discussed in a number of forums, is let's work on a permanent connector from northbound 101 to eastbound 580. There's a lot of detail on the history of both of these, especially the direct connector, in the staff report. Just very briefly, we kicked around ideas for the direct connector when the Prop 1B bond program was approved by voters in November 2006. We also revisited this as part of the Green-Gray working group process. Could we move forward quickly on a connector? We actually dedicated funds for us to begin the conceptual planning and getting out to the community and talking about this, doing some preliminary technical work. As part of the Green-Gray corridor redesignation of Regional Metro 2 funds, MTC rejected that request for funds to work on the connector. We want to bring that back and start working on this. We have this project in our regional transportation plan for full funding for the capital project. Due to the MTC reduction in RTP funds, we brought to you in June, and you accepted a number of changes to that regional transportation plan, including downsizing the funds for the connector from a full capitalized project to beginning the environmental and design process, which is where we have to start anyway for this very large project that will be in San Rafael. We've been working very closely with San Rafael on the interim solution. We also went out with San Rafael leadership to look at the permanent options and how they might affect particular parcels and what visual impacts there might be. And all of that is background for us to continue to work on this and go forward with an option that really is, quickly that we might be able to then seek revenue for. Our best option, in my opinion, on revenue for this would be the upcoming Regional Measure 3 toll program, which looks at congestion in and out of toll corridors, and this would be an excellent candidate. But we need to do some work conceptually, technically, to understand cost, scope, and any impacts that have to be addressed. So that really is a package of a temporary and getting started on a permanent solution. In a nutshell, and there's a lot of detail again on this in the staff report, and I'm not going to get into a whole lot of it for the sake of brevity today. We have some funds in the Measure A transportation sales tax that we reserved for bonding capacity. This was called for in the expenditure plan. It was a set aside that was directed annually for any bond financing for two major projects, the Highway 101 gap closure and major road projects, in case they came in all at the same time and we weren't able to cash flow them. The bond reserve set aside has been accumulating annually, and up till this year, 15-16, we've been spending it to pay back MTC. They gave us a very favorable loan instead of having to go out to the market for borrowing money for the gap closure. They waived interest the first year, gave us a very small amount the second 2 years, and basically saved us some money. So we were able to realize savings in this bond reserve pool. Likewise, on the major roads side, we haven't gone forward as quickly as was envisioned when the sales tax expenditure plan was adopted back in 2004. We got a number of major projects that have, a handful that have been completed, another one underway, Miller Avenue, a few others, Novato Boulevard, moving along, 3rd Street in San Rafael, East Drake, the county project, and we believe there will be a kind of a dense need for funds in about 2 or 3 years for all those major road projects. But by the time we fund major roads, and we're done with the gap closure, we paid it off, all done. We're probably going to have some money left, and I'm going to exhibit this when I bring this back for action in that bond reserve fund. We want to use that, we're recommending we use that for these approaches to the bridge, for the short-term and the long-term solution. Interestingly, the 580 connector was part of the original Highway 101 gap closure project. Here's the approved EIR, EIS, and it's right in there. It wasn't funded, obviously, in favor of spending what money we had to build the carpool lane, but it was an original element to the 101 gap closure project approval. Likewise, Sir Francis Drake, very clearly in our sales tax measure, was a major road project, all the way from 580 to Platform Bridge. We've taken pieces of it, and under different sponsors, we've been able to move forward. We've consulted with council. They believe since the bond reserve was meant for gap closure and major roads, you are free to redirect it to other gap closure needs and other major roads needs. That's a very clear and clean reuse of those funds, in their opinion. And we also have a final opinion from council. We've been trading details on that over the past week or two. So we want to use this bond reserve and redirect it to these two needs, short-term and long-term. We may have a cash flow challenge, which I also am going to exhibit to you in a couple of years. If all these major road projects stay on schedule, we're going to need this bond reserve for major roads. We may have to dip into the TAM reserve for cash flow purposes only. And that's $5 million that we set aside for dips in our sales tax. We've only tapped into it maybe once back in 2008 when the economy tanked. So we like to keep that in whole. There may need to be some cash flow use of that for these approach projects if all the major roads projects stay on schedule. We're getting schedules and detail from the project sponsors. We have our final consult tomorrow with them to make sure that we can still do the major road projects. We do not want to endanger any of the original projects that we committed to in the sales tax measure. So that really is what we're recommending. We applied for funds under OBAG 2 for these approaches. We believe as staff, and we're constantly hearing, and I'm constantly talking about these projects and the need for them and the benefit from them. There's a lot of pressure, obviously, to consider what we can do in the corridor, and we think this is a good solution outside of the OBAG 2 program. So now we still have the $10 million in OBAG funds. That you will now have options on how to spend, and this is funded another way, and that's what we're proposing. So with that, I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
Great, yes, please. Commissioner Sears and then Commissioner Frederick.
Thank you, Diane, and I think the staff report was very helpful. It had a lot of good information in it. I had one question for clarification in the staff report on page 7. It says that sufficient bond reserve will exist to adequately program $7 million, the short-term approach improvements, and that there's another $250,000 for concept and feasibility work, and both of those efforts need to start immediately, so that brings us up to $7,250,000. The next paragraph says that staff will request temporary usage of $5 million in Measure A reserve and an immediate allocation of $1.75 million either from the bond reserve or Measure A sales tax reserve. There's a delta there of about $500,000 between the $250,000 that's needed and the request for $6,750,000. And I'm just curious about where that additional $500,000 might come from, or am I misreading something?
Could be that the executive director possibly didn't exhibit her math skills very well in developing
It's
this
very
memo.
rare for my math skills to be better than someone else's, so that, thank you for that.
You know that the total request is $7,250,000.
Okay.
Yes, there is a. We believe we could. The ultimate goal is for you to approve the use of bonds. We have $5 million in Measure A general reserve we could use as a cash flow mechanism. We believe that that we can make this work between these two pots of money without having any project go unfunded or unaddressed. We'll kind of double check the math here. I think I know
Super.
what you mean. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Fredericks and then Commissioner Donnell.
So Diane, I just wanted to express some concern. I know that we have been addressing what the project concept would be for the long-term solution ever since I've been on TAM. That's a long time, and looking for funding options. And now we're really being politically pushed to do something, and nothing has really changed with respect to the availability of really construction money. So my concern is that if the gap between scrabbling together the planning and conceptual planning funding base to start that work, and the gap between that and actually getting construction money is too large, we'll once again be in this black hole where all the collaboration and agreement that has developed over the years disappears, as it did really with the interchange. Is there anything we can do to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Well, I think in our strategic vision planning process, and we're kind of at the very early stages of testing the public's kind of values with respect to transportation, but eventually there will be a big piece of that vision plan that will look at revenue strategies for the future and what do we want to put in there. Federal funds, state funds, toll funds. I'm hoping by the time we really kick this off, we're hearing from MTC that they are going to bring forward an increase in the Bay Area toll bridges, $1, maybe $2.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, we got $100 million out of Regional Measure 2 in Marin County, and that was back in 2003, and revenues available then. Let's hope we get, we have at least that much possibly that's available to us for Regional Measure 3, or even more if it's $2. I think there'll be a moment before you get into this too far that you'll have an opportunity to say, here's what we envision including in this revenue strategy, or in this revenue strategy, or a priority for state funds. The good news is this is in a toll corridor, and it's a highway-to-highway connector, which, as hopefully we all know, the California Transportation Commission likes highway projects better than anything else. At least that's been my history with them for 20 years. So I think there'll be some indicators, some actions that you can take from a policy viewpoint that kind of focus. But we don't know how much it's going to cost, and whether it should be one direction or both directions, and issues that San Rafael's already brought to our attention in terms of effects on the community. So that's the kind of stuff we got to dig into a little more. That $250 is modest, in my opinion, and I think it's a good investment.
It is a good investment, but my real concern was whether that gap between the planning and actually getting construction money, whether that window, once again, doesn't sit. I mean, you can't do anything about it, it's just a concern.
It's a strong candidate for a toll program. There's talk about a toll program coming up next year, with it being on the ballot in 18 or 20. So it could be that some opportunity is right around the corner. We need to know if this should be, we need to know a little bit more about this so we understand whether this should be our priority or not. There'll probably be a number of things that we're going to want to talk about in the toll program.
If I might, Alice, we've also been talking internally about developing concepts and taking those to the public early in the process for a reaction, and trying to get a handle on what do they think about the potential composition of a connector. And I know you said that was done before. I think ours is to really deal with the community concerns right up front. Yeah, please.
Thank you, and I'd like to speak to that because, I was up to my neck in the Green Bay Corridor project. I think from my perspective, one of the reasons the Green Bay Corridor project kind of fell apart is because the public wasn't truly engaged early on in a way that was really meaningful and that the public understood what the project was. For instance, there was use of terms that the public didn't understand, things like graded ramps. Graded ramps sound fine until you realize it's really just a euphemism for gigantic flyover. So I think we need to have things like illustrations available very early on. In illustrations that really put the project into perspective that people can understand. I would also highly recommend that TAM be as creative as possible in contracting out the early conceptual design work, because I was not impressed with the product that came out of the contractors, or the designers for the Green Bay Corridor project. I feel that what they came up with was over-engineered for the problem that was there and resulted in massive concrete structures that weren't perhaps necessary. Other parts of the country are doing much more state-of-the-art creative engineering, and I would really love to see this agency maybe kind of reach out to new consultants that we haven't done work with before to maybe get some different kinds of conceptual approaches to this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Donnell and then Commissioner Goddard.
I just say we're having to do with the public is what I've been receiving in the last week. So I'm curious if, about going, when are you gonna do something, do something, do something? So, okay, so the $250,000 toward a project design, how long might a project do, would you guess, a project design? Or not the design, but the preliminary work.
The work, since the funds were available now, which helps, don't forget the OBAG funds aren't available till 17, 18, which is gonna be the fall of 17, that's every year from now. But these funds are available currently. I think we could get started within a couple of months and be done in less than a year. I mean, if we're doing some design, kind of creative design efforts or design kind of workshops, that kind of thing, could take a little longer. I mean, we got to lay out an outreach strategy. And so, no more than that, I would say.
So I think it's important to communicate
Yeah.
that something is being actively done. And then and the other thing is just from years ago, that Sandra Fell wasn't thrilled about going through their town. Has that changed that I'm aware of?
They're thrilled now.
Okay.
Says the guy from
Mayor
Rockford.
Hilmer has spoken.
I mean, so is that something we're able to work with now?
Well, just
Work with
to
work?
kind of establish one quick thought there. What San Rafael was concerned about was the connector going the other direction.
Right.
This was the westbound, southbound connector, which if you can imagine, needs to be pretty high to get over the new connector we built from southbound 101 to eastbound. So, it's gonna be pretty big. That's the one that
Well, we
San
had two
Rafael-
concerns, and I
Yeah.
don't know if they're still in place, but two concerns, at least I did. One was, we have this Sutter owns Marin Square, so this was, it appeared to us anyway, at that point in time, gonna go boom right through through that location. So we were concerned about that, and then two, at least at that point in time, we were told, I believe, that the structure would be 90 feet tall. Now, my reaction to that was, well, wait a minute, folks, 90 feet tall, if we're all concerned about LA2, particularly after our experience with Green Bay and Larkspur, at 30 feet, what's the community going to say with regard to 90 feet? So those were the principal concerns. And if in fact that's the configuration, we still are.
All right, so no, just a moment. Renee, and then Judy, and then Dan, and then back to you, Katie.
Just super briefly, could you just provide a status update about the bicycle pedestrian piece of the project on the Richmond Bridge?
The Richmond Bridge Upper Deck bike lane project with connections on both ends, on the Contra Costa and Marin side, is a separately packaged project that will be advertised later this fall. So it's a few months behind in advertising. It will also be done with its construction a few months behind the lane, so that will be late 2017. That project has investments on the Marin side and Contra Costa side in terms of how the bikes connect to existing path systems. What might be best is for Dan, the project manager, to sit down with you and talk about what those are. We'd be glad to illustrate them. Good to see them on the road. Also could show you plan sheets on that. But there are good connections on both sides of the bridge.
There are lots of public misconceptions and lack of clarity on whether that even exists as a project.
Okay.
So I'll do some more.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes, sure. This is really a question to the board today when you're discussing using the bond funds. For some of you, this is new. For others, you've heard this song and dance several times. But a promise was made to Novato 8 years ago to take the $4.5 million that Novato had put aside for their downtown bus transfer center and give that to the Doyle Drive interchange because they were short. And Novato did do that. Since then, MTC has put in money, and we are now over about only $200,000 short of getting this bus transfer center done. So I would ask if we're allocating a board reserve to include $200,000 to fulfill this promise, which, by the way, we've only, the project is not a $4 million project. We've cut it down to a $2 million project. So I would ask for that. Thank you. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, please.
Only with respect to the 101-580 connector work to build on what Mayor Phillips was talking about. I think that whatever process we take on for the money, that first of all, this is an inevitable discussion in my opinion, and a feasibility study dealing with this inevitable topic is money well spent. I think it also needs to expose the worst scenarios in terms of impacts, just in terms of being a defensible environmental conversation. I also think that the broadest possible public engagement for the money is important. This is dealing with not only local impacts, but the route across the bridge using 101 is now a San Francisco route. It's not just impacting East Bay trips to Larkspur. This is a San Francisco route now. So if we can engage even the Golden Gate Bridge District, I think, in this conversation, I think the broadest possible collaborative conversation as well as public engagement would be justified given the impacts. These are county impacts now, not just local impacts.
Great.
So I would just, in principle, urge those
Thank you, Dan.
included in the approach.
Great. Okay, Katie Rice.
Yeah, Diane, thank you for this. I'm mostly focused, agreeing with everything that's been said about the long-term solution and looking at this, at that direct connector. It is, the process is gonna be complex, controversial, and we're gonna have to go through it in order to answer the questions and make a decision about whether to do, but it could take a long time, even if it's a green light all the way. And so I think it's critically important that we do this temporary solution, and I'm all for using those bond funds to do the two approach improvements, but just to be the devil's advocate a little bit, I'm wondering what projects could be competing for that money that have been out there in the, you know, whether it's the Novato bus or what have you, because these are funds that can be used for construction right now. And I don't, I want the board to be able to say yes to directing those monies towards these approaches for what I think are critically needed improvements, both locally and to make that third lane actually worth its weight and worth the money spent on it. But that we understand what might not be getting funded.
That's good.
So is there any, I mean,
Well,
and I do think that the timing works well, because with the RM3 coming up eventually, but I think you should, what else is out there looking for money?
The OBEG projects, every one of them that was listed, and what Diane's trying to do is carve away some money that can be used specifically for these uses that can't be used for some of the other OBEG projects. So I think what you'll see when it comes back in the July board meeting is that all of the needs are gonna be listed. And then there'll be various recommendations for funding strategies for the different needs.
But this project, these approaches will differ slightly, I think, maybe not, in that they'll be fairly shovel-ready pretty quickly.
Well,
And the goal is
you know,
about that timing to sync it up with the third lane.
That's correct. I mean, we if you approve the funding, we've solicited consultant support and are ready to award a contract for environmental and design work the day after the board meeting, if you approve the funding. So we will go to work immediately on designing, environmentally clearing, doing this public outreach for this approach work. We'd like to have them under construction in the next summer season, so that when the bridge lane opens, these are underway. And we can point to them, and you can point to them to say they're coming. You know, the lane's here, we know it's not ideal how to get to it, but these projects are underway and they will be done soon. So that's the goal. If I may, the other thing that you mentioned, it's council's opinion, and you will have that in your hands, that you will best meet the intent of the expenditure plan if you use these funds on what they were originally intended for, which is an element of the gap closure or a major road project. So, yes, there are other major road projects, so that is an option for you, but, you know, we're guaranteeing them all the major road projects that are currently planned will be funded and delivered. There's no subtraction there, but that, you know, some other element of the gap closure or some other major road project, council would say that would also meet the intent of these funds.
Thanks.
Great. Are there any last questions before we, yes, Eric?
Yeah, I just have one with regards to time savings really on the road there. And I remember seeing some estimates before, but do we know what would be the estimate of time savings either going eastbound, making that commute, or just coming northbound on 101 with the third lane opening and without these improvements, and then with the third lane opening and with these improvements?
Let us bring that back to you as part of our work in July.
Mhm.
There is definite improvement with the third lane opening, but this will add to that. This
Yeah.
will be an incremental improvement on top of that.
I-
That will add to
And I think that's really helpful when, making important decisions like this, when you have other projects that are taken away, you could determine, all right, this investment is going to save X number of people this amount of time on a daily basis. It really helps in the prioritization of which project do you put the dollars towards or not. My second question, I know we had requested the $7 million from BATA originally and had an unfavorable response. I seem to remember there was going to be some sort of go back or ask again, or
Oh, yeah.
and that's all
Oh,
coming up
we-
unfruitful.
We met, we asked, we pleaded, our MTC commissioner, if he was here, could talk about that. He sponsored some meetings, and the answer was no. Part of the issue there is when we brought this to you in January, there was a supposed $6 or $7 million savings. They redirected about $4 million of that to the bike path work on the Marin side to make sure that when bikes got off the bridge, they could connect with the Bay Trail, they could connect safely to Anderson, they could connect onto Drake. And so there has been some of that money has already come to us with respect to the bike improvements, and therefore, there's no savings left now. And so that was, the unofficial response is, if we had any money left, maybe, but at this point, we don't even know if we have enough
Yeah.
to
And,
do the original scope.
and when does their project go out to bid?
July 26th.
And bids would probably be coming in. I mean, at some point, we'll know pretty
Let's
soon.
cross our minds.
if there's going to
Bids
be.
are low.
Yeah. Which, who knows?
Why
But
not?
is there maybe one last opportunity once the bids come in?
There may be, but as your public works guys have told us, and as we've seen with some of your local projects, bids
aren't coming in low these days. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So we'll see.
We'll
But
cross
sure,
our fingers on that one.
We are gonna keep our eye on that.
All right.
Yes.
Great.
Great.
thank
Okay,
you.
I think with that,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you,
great.
Diane, thank you, everyone. That's our first look at this particular funding issue. Thanks for widening out the discussion. All right, we're going to take a break right now and reconfigure the room. And okay, good. We'll reconvene now in open session. We just came out of closed session on a personnel matter, and direction from the board was given, and there is no further action to report. Thank you. We are adjourned.